end zone, underthrown, touchdown, Trey Tucker. To the end zone it goes. Caught! Touchdown, Armon Benz.
Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the show. I'm your host, Russ Heltman, joined, as always, by my co-host, Neil Meyer of the FrontOfficeNews.com. You can catch my work at Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, where Cincinnati is flying high, getting plenty of praise this week. We'll touch on all that before we preview the Iowa State Cyclones matchup. Number 14, Iowa State, coming to Cincinnati on Saturday afternoon for a noon kickoff at Nippert Stadium. What I would say is the biggest game of the Scott Satterfield era, a chance for Cincinnati to buck the trend and end a 5-game losing streak to ranked opponents ever since they went to the college football playoff back a few years ago. We'll do that to start the show. We will start with some Brendan Sorsby love this week. Is a top-graded passer on PFF, top 10 ranking on ESPN right now from Bill Connolly. Can he sustain it? We'll discuss that. And then we will, of course, get the show started with some brand new basketball betting odds from our good friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Talk about all that in just a moment. FanDuel Sportsbook, of course, your number one sportsbook and the best place to bet on college football. All kinds of boosts going on this weekend. You got the weekly Boostin' with the Boys, 30% profit boost to use on any wager. And you can use that any wager minus 200 and above, that is. And you can also boost a wager minus 200 odds and above for the Miami and Florida State matchup this weekend as well. I believe that's a 50% profit boost there. So even better value on that token. FanDuel Sportsbook, America's number one sportsbook. And we'll start the show with some hoops betting odds from them and a particular award betting number for Mustafa Cham as well. And then we'll close out the show with a preview and prediction for the Iowa State matchup. All that coming up on Bearcat Blitz. Bring in my co-host Neil Meyer now as we open up the first segment of the show for the back half of the week, entering a matchup against the Iowa State Cyclones for the Cincinnati Bearcats football team. What I did not preview in the cold open there was Dante Corleone. We got to get to that real quick before we touch on the betting odds, Neil. Dante Corleone questionable this week on the injury report for Cincinnati. Really the only issue to monitor for Cincinnati when it comes to their injuries, and plenty of issues to monitor on the other side for Iowa State. You mentioned them having one starter out. Neil, I think I mentioned one starter not going to shift the betting line much, but I think the betting line shifted because more than one starter is probably going to miss this game. They're going to have multiple starters in the secondary out for this contest, and they could also have a couple more players and be completely depleted at the safety and cornerback positions. When you look at Cam Smith, David Coffey, and Kajon Cummings-Coleman, all three questionable right now to play in this game. Iowa State is experiencing some massive cluster injuries in the secondary. When you look at what they have there right now, I mean, they're not going to have Jontez Williams or Jeremiah Cooper Neal. Those are their two best corners on the entire team. It's set up for a passing field day for Brendan Sorsby if he can stay hot on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And when you look down at the initial injury report that came out last night, obviously Jeremiah Cooper missed last week due to what is now known as an ACL injury that's going to sideline him for the rest of the season. And then we mentioned it on Monday's show where the betting odds would kind of shift a little bit. I mentioned Jeremiah Cooper. Jontez Williams now also out for the season, as Matt Campbell confirmed earlier this week, with an ACL injury as well. So anytime you lose your top two defensive backs, it's never going to be an easy day there in the secondary. And then Kajon Cummings-Coleman is also another guy who is banged up and was caught with his arm in a sling over the weekend following their game. So overall, that secondary is banged up. It's going to be interesting to see guys like Cam Smith, David Coffey, and Kajon Cummings-Coleman, who are all three on the initial injury report listed as questionable. It's going to be interesting to see what their status was going to be, because for Iowa State, they're going to need some depth at that position, especially losing your top two guys in Williams and Cooper. But overall, this could be a day where Cincinnati and Brendan Sorsby lets this thing fly in front of a packed out 40,000 fans at Nippert Stadium. Scott Satterfield mentioned this is going to be the biggest weekend in Cincinnati in terms of recruits since he has taken over at the helm for Cincinnati. So a lot of big time recruits, a couple 4 stars will be in attendance. On top of it, Joe Royer, we didn't touch on that, Russ. He is not listed on the injury report
No,
heading
he's
into
healthy,
this one,
ready to go.
and he is completely healthy for Cincinnati after an injury scare versus Kansas. It sounds like it was just a little whiplash thing after taking a hard tackle from behind uh, on that one of those final drives versus Kansas. So that is a very big sign because Cincinnati is going to need him. And then Dante Corleone, Russ. Scott Satterfield mentioned he would still be questionable, which on the initial injury report he is. But after seeing practice on Tuesday, it would be very shocking to see Dante Corleone not out there with the boys on Saturday in a must-win matchup versus number 14 Iowa State at home.
No doubt. Yeah. Definitely expect to see Dante out there. I don't know if it's must win, Neil, for all the goals this season, but it's a game you definitely
It's a game you
can
want.
Yeah, definitely a game you want. There's no must wins just yet. The goal is to get to the bowl appearance, and they're already halfway there. We're not going to put the must wins on the table just yet. Although I'm sure some fans look at this as a must win to get to that major goal, which would be an appearance in the Big 12 championship game. It's going to be difficult to get there if they do not take out Iowa State and offer them their first loss of the season on Saturday afternoon. Speaking of some losses, speaking of some odds, speaking of some different action across the college sports landscape, Neil, let's take a look at the Cincinnati Bearcats odds to lift the regular season trophy for the Big 12 season this coming basketball slate. The Bearcats are not necessarily looked at as as one of those major options to lift the title, Neil. They're hovering between 40 and 60 to 1, depending on what sports book you look at right now. And Cincinnati kind of sitting right there in the middle of the pack of the Big 12 in terms of overall odds to win the conference, roughly 8th best odds, depending on what sports book you look at, Neil. And when we look at the overall national championship odds for Cincinnati, pulling those up right now, they are very, very long in the 200 range, not really expected to be a contender for the national championship this coming season, but they're on the board there nonetheless. And specifically on FanDuel Sportsbook, Cincinnati is a 40 to 1, holds 40 to 1 odds to win the Big 12, and they are at 250 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook, the longest odds of any sportsbook to win the national championship. Neil, it's about getting to the dance. We're not putting any expectations of a regular season title or any kind of national championship run on this Bearcats team.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I think everybody kind of knows what's at stake for Cincinnati, and that's just simply make the NCAA tournament, right? Especially in year 5 under Wes Miller, a complete roster overhaul. It's going to be interesting to see what this team is actually going to be kind of made of, right? We've seen some glimpses and some behind the scenes looks a little bit, but you got 2 big exhibition matchups versus Michigan and Arkansas to really kind of see what this team is made of, both in which are going to be streamed on television as well. So overall, you got about 3-4 weeks to figure this thing out before they kick off the season versus Western Carolina on November 3rd. And it's going to be interesting to see how does Wes Miller and this staff kind of just simply find a way to get this team over the hump and back to the big dance for the first time since 2019.
Some good odds there and some big praise for Brendan Sorsby. Touch on that right now, Neil. Brendan Sorsby, we mentioned it maybe earlier in the week. I don't remember if we did, but among players with at least 100 dropbacks in the college football ranks right now, Brendan Sorsby is the best of any quarterback so far. 92.9 overall grade. That's the number 1 grade on Pro Football Focus for any qualified quarterback with a minimum of 100 attempts so far this season in the country. And he's ranked 6th by Bill Connolly of ESPN for his top power conference quarterbacks in the nation so far, 6th best in the country. And Neil, he's got Cincinnati just playing some elite offensive football. They're one of the best offenses so far in the country this season, one of the most efficient, one of the best yards per play offenses. And overall, Sorsby, 1,043 yards, 238 rushing yards, 69.2% completion rate, 14 total touchdowns, one interception, 87.6 ESPN QBR so far. And that ranks right in line with his ranking from Bill Connolly, sixth best nationally. Neil, I don't know if this is sustainable. I think it's somewhat sustainable. I think he'll be able to be within the top 20 passers, top 25 passers firmly throughout the entire season when it comes to grade and overall QBR when we get to the end. But if he does this the entire season, Neil, we're going to be talking about those Big 12 title odds more and more and more, because with quarterback play this good in a league this wide open, you're going to be knocking on the door of a Big 12 title appearance if you got your signal caller playing at this high a level. I mean, if you're playing the best of any quarterback in the country, you're going to be right there at the end, especially starting out 1-0 in Big 12 play.
Absolutely. And the thing is, while you're looking down at the stats for Brendan Sorsby, you see he is the highest ranked quarterback in terms of the with 100 dropbacks and whatnot. But you can't give credit to Brendan Sorsby without giving credit to the offensive line. And I think that is what has really allowed Brendan to excel, Russ, because I mean, you look at that offensive line, they only allowed one sack this year, and it came versus a Kansas team who at that rate was averaging roughly 3.5 sacks a game heading into their matchup versus Cincinnati last week. So you got to give praise to this offensive line. Guys like Joe Cotton, Gavin Gerhardt, Evan Tangasol, Xavier Lozowicki, DeAndre Buford, the offensive line group as a whole, Tarantayo as well, has been stellar up front. And that was a question mark a lot of people had for this season. And you and I talked about it plenty of times throughout this offseason. What would this offensive line be able to do, and how would that be able to kind of allow things to flow for Brendan Sorsby? Now with this offensive line locked in, really playing well, two-time offensive line of the week here in the Big 12, that has played a big role, and they're not only eating good off the field, Russ, they're eating good, or not only eating good on the field, but they're eating good off the field as well, as Brendan Sorsby has been known to treat his offensive linemen to a nice dinner at Jeff Ruby's following each victory. And when you have that kind of chemistry and that kind of leader there, it's well deserved. So overall, you can't give credit to Brendan Sorsby without the credit of the big guys up front. So if Cincinnati is able to withstand that and keep that offensive line trending at this direction, there's a good chance, if all things go well, we could be sitting here in the deep end of November talking about this team potentially playing for a Big 12 championship.
And it all continues on Saturday against Iowa State in a matchup that thoroughly, as we have discussed earlier with the injuries, and as we will discuss in the preview coming up, favors Brendan Sorsby to get the bull by the horns once again and go win a football game powered by his skill for the Cincinnati Bearcats. We'll preview all that coming up on the back end of the show right here on the Believe Network. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, where you can bet on the Bearcats right now to win the Big 12, and a number that will crater even further if Cincinnati can find a way to pull off a victory as a narrow favorite this weekend. Cincinnati currently holds the sixth best odds in the conference at 12-1 to win the Big 12. Neil, those are going to get cut in half down to Iowa State range, where they're at right now with the Cyclones sitting currently at plus 650. Those two teams, they're going to flip their odds, I would imagine, if Cincinnati wins this game. So if you think the Bearcats are going to get the job done, may want to get over to FanDuel Sportsbook and get ahead of that line movement. They were 33-1 2 weeks ago to win the Big 12, and now Cincinnati is down to 12-1 odds to take home the Big 12 championship for the first time in program history. Long way to go until then, and a lot of previews to go until then. We'll have you covered with another one coming up after these messages. Diving into our Iowa State preview, setting the stage here, Neil, with the game kicking off at noon Eastern on Saturday, ESPN2 airwaves. Iowa State has actually flipped back to a slight matchup predictor favorite in this one. Cincinnati held a 51% matchup predictor favorite rating going into the week, but Iowa State has flipped back to 51.5% here to win the football game. On the betting line, Cincinnati has gone from a 3.5 point underdog to a 1.5 point favorite, and that's pretty much stayed steady throughout the entire week. Iowa State undefeated. They're 2-0 already in the Big 12, number 14 overall in the country, but not necessarily that highly ranked, Neil, in the kind of analytic metrics. I won't go through all of them, but they're hovering closer to the 30s than they are the top 10, where they are ranked right now in terms of overall gauging from the computers, and them not necessarily liking that 5-0 undefeated number as much as the human AP voters. Neil, this is going to come down to Brendan Sorsby for me here. I think this is set up beautifully for him to have another monstrous game through the air and with his legs against this Iowa State defense that's depleted on the back end now, and also, Neil, does not create much pressure. 8 sacks so far this season. That is, let me check, 82nd nationally. This is a far cry from the dogs, the rabid barking dogs that they were facing against Kansas on the road last week. You get your friendly confines, you get your friendly cadences, you get the friendly home fields of Nippert Stadium for Brendan Sorsby. And I think just with the issues that Iowa State has in the secondary, I think this could be a massive day for Brendan Sorsby. He could touch 400 yards passing again. I would be shocked if Cincinnati does not hit at least 28 points in this contest, which I believe is right around their over-under on FanDuel Sportsbook. So check that out, people, if you're looking to make a non-money line play on Cincinnati having some success here. I mean, it's a complete mismatch, Neil. 113th in dropback EPA allowed so far this season by Iowa State's defense, going up against a Brendan Sorsby that is red hot, as we just mentioned. 6th best QBR in the country, number 1 graded passer in the country. He's getting more and more instincts with his receivers. Joe Royer's healthy. Dante Corleone's healthy. Everybody's healthy here. Offensively, I think this could be a field day for Cincinnati going up against a depleted Iowa State secondary that is not, as I mentioned, going to bring many pressure issues to the forefront here. And Neil, on top of that, like, it's a massive special teams mismatch here. Like, a egregiously massive chasm between Steven Rusnek, the kicker for Cincinnati, who is the best kicker in the country so far this year, I believe holds the longest consecutive streak in the nation of made field goals, did so last week, was a key factor in the win last week. They don't win that football game without the leg of Steven Rusnek, and he won kicker or special teams player of the week because of it. Neil, I don't think Iowa State has a healthy kicker on the roster, let alone a kicker that you trust. So
they're on their third string kicker. So basically a walk-on kicker at this rate.
Right. They're probably going to be going for 4th downs every time it's 4th and 6 or less at this point. So that's a way more volatility that's, I don't think, going to be in the hands of the Cincinnati Bearcats defense, although they are 107th nationally in 3rd and 4th down success rate this season. That could be an issue down the line. But overall, Neil, it's just, there are too many things leaning Cincinnati's way for me to not pick the Bearcats here. Yes, they were horrible against the run against Kansas. Yes, the back end of this defense has to figure out some way to get stickier in coverage. I mean, they had a 33% success rate last week in passing. That's so bad. I mean, the Jayhawks averaged 10.9 yards per play against this Bearcats team that got lucky to win. They did get lucky to win last week, but they also got unlucky to win against Nebraska. I think things have kind of even out on the luck front for Cincinnati after coming away with a win with a 24% post-game win expectancy against Kansas. UC is not creating much pass rush. They're not producing much havoc in terms of balls on the ground, creating turnovers, all that stuff. But I do think they'll create one or two more turnovers in this game. And Neil, the addition of Dante Corleone in the middle of that defense is going to help solidify that run defense and help them create a bigger push up the middle. Give me the Bearcats in this one, 31-28, a close nail biter. And kind of like you did last week, I think Steven Rusnak's leg is going to play a major factor at the end, and a couple missed fourth downs, a missed field goal here and there. The special teams issues and the special teams chasm, I think, is going to make a big difference in a game that is as nip-tuck as it gets. Give me the Bearcats 31-28.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Russ, because when you look down at this matchup on paper, you see that Iowa State is missing their top two defensive backs. Everybody knows that, but like we talk about here on this show, what's not getting as much talked about is the special teams aspect for Iowa State. They are down to their third string kicker, which anybody who follows college football knows essentially that is your walk-on kicker. That is, and for Matt Campbell,
he's never attempted a field goal, Neil. Never attempted one. 4 for 4 on PATs, has never attempted a field goal in 2 games as a true freshman.
And you have to think about that too, heading into a road environment like Nippert Stadium, where, let's be honest, Russ, this is going to be probably the same atmosphere as what it was versus Oklahoma 2 years ago.
I'm hoping it's better. I mean, it should be better. The fans should be more amped for this game. There was nothing really to get hyped about for the team in general for the Oklahoma game. You got the number 1 quarterback in the country right now. Get out there, people. Support this team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm expecting the student section to be rowdy, everybody to be out there. It's going to be an environment. And what's also worth noting too, Russ, is you have WWE SmackDown on Friday night. And you've seen the post, Angelo Dawkins, some of the wrestlers going to be in attendance for this one. You saw the post. Angelo is pretty fired up. So overall, this is going to be a game where Cincinnati has every advantage analytically, per se. But you can't count Iowa State out. I think it's going to be a back and forth game. However, this is, like you mentioned, I'm going to 100% agree with you. This is going to be a game where it comes down to special teams. And when you have a kicker like Steven Rusnak, who just oozes confidence, is a team player, and has put a lot of field goals through the back of that net, you look down, this is going to be a big-time opportunity for him. You're going 31-28, but with the return of Dante Corleone and a fully healthy Bearcats, I'm going to go 38-35 there, with Steven Rusnak burying a field goal in the final minutes of this one to give Cincinnati their 4th victory of the season versus a top-ranked opponent in Iowa State, which would be, Russ, not only their first win versus a ranked opponent since 2021 per se, but their first under Scott Satterfield as well. And if that is the case, Cincinnati has quite the bit of momentum heading into their rivalry game versus UCF next week.
That they could. Rocco Beck, typically in his career, has kind of tailed off a little bit in October. That's playing into my prediction here as well. And just, Neil, like, they have relied, you and I both know this, so heavily on the back end of that defense this season. Mm-hmm. They're one of the top 30, top 35 coverage units in the country, but that coverage unit ain't really going to be there on Saturday, given all of the injury issues they are dealing with. And it's going to come down to Brendan Sorsby and his arm. It will. If he is accurate, he is dialed in, I think Cincinnati gets the job done here, and they're going to need him to, because the Cyclones very solid at limiting massive plays on the ground. These big plays are going to happen through the air for Cincinnati, because Iowa State enters this game 6th nationally in defensive rushing expected points added per play allowed. So gotta find those open receivers through the air. And you got a fully healthy receiving core to do so, fully healthy offensive line, basically fully healthy team. Go out, get the job done, win as favorites, and get to 1-5 in the Scott Satterfield era against ranked opponents. You got to get that first one to start getting back closer to 500 in that metric. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Eltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz. We'll talk to you all next week, the normal 2 times, after a really fun, really exciting matchup against Iowa State. Enjoy the game, everybody.